30 hertz straight up.
Period. Peace, 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 y'all. This is Empress Coach Rena Nicole, and this is the AM Inspiration Show to wake that ass up. Streaming live on all networks, including Pandora, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Clubhouse. Oh my goodness. And so many more. With that being said, today to end the topic on how to move on, the last and final episode of Moving On Week is what? How to forgive yourself. So, with that being said, listen to this drop for 10 more seconds and we're going to get right into the topic. Period.
Straight up.
Well, peace, 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 y'all. Now, all week long, we've been talking about how to move on, different types of ways to move on, giving different tips and advices on moving on. Um, Even some of our rooms in the hallway on Clubhouse, we've talked about different things about how to identify um, inauthentic people, different things like that, right? So, literally making peace and moving forward in your existence is literally easier said than done because of attachment, right? But being able to forgive yourself requires something that most people don't really give to themselves, unfortunately, which is empathy, compassion, and kindness, and also understandings. It requires you to accept that forgiveness is a choice, right? Because you don't have to forgive yourself. Whether you're working through minor mistakes or one that can impact your existence, across the board, you have to take those steps to forgive yourself. Um, but they always going to look the same, if that makes any sense, right? As humans, we are perfectly flawed, or like some people like to say, imperfect. Okay. Um, the ideal nature of humans is to learn from our mistakes. If you take it back to the time where people were just wildly hunting animals, and they didn't have like skyscrapers and stuff like that, where people were just dying from eating the wrong plants because they didn't have scientists and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So they learned from the mistake, like, oh, such and such that happened to them. So we're not going to do that because that's what happened when they did that. You know what I'm saying? But we have more things in alignment to help us out to not do certain things now. So as painful and uncomfortable as forgiving yourself can be, or things in the things in life that we endure can be, in order to move forward, we have to forgive ourselves, right? So let's get into some ways on to do that, right? So the one thing that people don't like to do is the one thing that we need to do, actually process, right? So not really like hyper focusing on your emotions, but focusing on your emotion can be a step that you learn to take head on, right? Because before you even move forward, you have to acknowledge that this thing happened, you know, um, and it's no longer there. Like it's no longer there, and you no longer have that attachment. You have to like, you know what, it's really over. Sometimes it's hard to move on because it's like, you know what, it's not over. I'll have another chance. They'll come back to me, and you don't forgive yourself for staying maybe too long. You don't forgive yourself for maybe ignoring red flags, things of that nature, right? So it's hard to accept and process anything when you're in a state of denial. Okay. So when you acknowledge your mistakes out loud, when you make mistakes, um, you can continue to struggle with them, or you can acknowledge them out loud, right? So you do have a choice. Everything in your existence is a choice. And when you listen to those automatic thoughts, the thoughts we've been talking about for the last 56 episode, the automatic thoughts in our mind that come to our mind first. When you give into those thoughts, excuse me, when you give into those thoughts and you don't allow yourself that grace of saying, you know what, that's not true, or I'm not going to believe that because that's just anxiety, or that's just something it doesn't align with reality, right? Um, you will give yourself burdens. But when you don't listen to those thoughts, you free yourself from being burdenful. Burdenful can be like stressed out, shaky, not trusting. Your thoughts can really put you in any place in life. Okay, so when you teach your mind to reframe thoughts, negative, because automatic thoughts are usually either high vibrational or low vibrational, right? Or positive or negative. Okay, and when you train them to just stop automatically, like, okay, if you have a negative thought, like, nope, that's not really something that's true. So I'm gonna move forward. You know, um, but literally when you imprint on your mind what you learn from your actions and consequences, they stick there. It sticks in your mind. And we went over there a long time ago how you can forget things, but once you bring it back in, it's like, okay, I remember this now, right? So that's another thing as well. Um, Another way to forgive yourself is to remember that each mistake is a learning experience. Not only did you know, get a lesson, right? You gain an experience, okay? And whether the experience was a good experience or not even good, but like something that made you feel liberated or something that didn't make you feel liberated, um it actually helps you to move forward in the future and propel yourself into like the next step of your life, beyond whatever you're moving on from. Okay, so literally telling yourself the one thing that most people don't tell themselves is, I did the best I could. That's the most encouraging thing you could ever tell yourself. And you have to believe it, because you can say it all you want to, but if you don't believe that you really did your best, that you really poured in as much as you could, then if you don't believe it, how can your subconscious believe it? How could your aura believe it? How could you attract things to you that believe that? Because even if you move on and you say these things, right, and you don't believe them, guess what can happen to you? Just take a wild guess. You can cycle in another person, place, or thing that's going to repeat the same thing. Okay. So that's the risk that you run. Okay. So be mindful when it comes to that. Remind yourself that you did the best you could and use the tools that you can by gaining the knowledge that you can on moving forward, practicing it and how it works out for you, and persevering through it to get the results that you desire with moving on and forgiving yourself. Okay. Knowledge, practice, perseverance. So you call it KPP. That's what we call it, in psychological terms, KPP, right? Okay. So keep that in mind. So, um, my whole thing is like, processing is not automatically. Um, as you've known over the years, I've always shared my story about me processing emotions or just even conversations. It takes me a while. It can take me like 2 weeks. It can take me 3 months. It's just like, if it's something that's really, really, I feel like it has the potential to be painful or something that can hurt, I'm like, yeah. So I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait to try to process that later. And it's like sometimes, unfortunately, as a human, we react first and we process later. And I think all of us have become susceptible to that. But giving yourself permission to put the process on hold is always a smart decision if you don't process things well. Putting the process on hold does not mean that you're going to remain in denial, though, or you're going to remain stagnant and thinking they're going to come back and you're not going to forgive yourself. So let's get a little bit more deeper into how to give yourself permission to put the process on hold, right? So if and when you make a mistake, but have a hard time putting it out of your mind, you have to visualize thoughts and feelings about that mistake, and put in those somewhere, like in, like, I guess you would have like a garbage pail of your mind, right? And putting it there, and like, okay, well, I'm going, or like a Pandora's box. Okay, that's better than garbage pail. Put it in your Pandora's box for later. Okay, so it's not in the front of your mind. It's not bothering you. That medulla oblongata, the anger source, up there, like the anger is not really fired up or anything like that, because you remove that, what's going on, and you're like, you know what, I'm putting this away for later. Okay, so you had to tell yourself that as well. Listen, I'm going to put this to the side, and like, okay, so what's the consequence of that? The consequences potentially for that is suppression. Suppression, literally is when you put it to the side and you never address it ever. Suppression, of course, can lead to mental illness, mental disease, inflammation in your body, which can make you gain weight, gain disease, break out in your skin. Oh, it's definitely a lot of pros and cons to suppression. So keep in mind that you're putting it away for later, but you're not putting it away forever. Okay, the things that you put away forever is the reason why we have so many traumas and why we have so many triggers, because we suppress, right? We suppress and we forget too. We suppress it, we put it in that Pandora's box, and we forget all about it. And then when something happens or someone rubs us the wrong way, boom, shaka laka 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 chief rocker. Here we go. Hello, is this thing on? Okay. So that's what happens, it's like, hello, yeah, right. So that the next step is that you can have those conversations with yourself. They always say talk to yourself and don't answer yourself. That means you're crazy. I don't know who came up with that, but that's what they say. Dun, dun, dun. Right. So having that conversation with your inner critic can help you, right? And so, okay, so how do I do that, Empress? You always talk about some having conversations with yourself. Hello. Okay, so you can try journaling. Um, and journaling definitely will help you to understand your inner critic, right? And develop self-compassion, right? So when you write out a conversation between you and your inner critic, like say for instance, if your inner critic is extremely harsh on you, it's always telling you never do things right, and you actually believe that, so you can write down in your journal, like, you know what, I believe that I do a lot of things right, and you just want to bring me down, because of the trauma of blah 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 or whatever happened. You get what I'm saying? So it literally can help you identify your thought patterns that are sabotaging your ability to forgive yourself. Because, like, you know what? Because sometimes even when we're breaking up or something, somebody's like, oh, it's all your fault, and you might take that on. So you think like, oh man, it was my fault because I did this and that. So you start beating yourself up. And now you have an issue with yourself, and you got to sit down and have that conversation with yourself, because now you're sabotaging yourself. Say, for instance, if you meet new people and something happens, you're like, you know what? You feel like you always got to take accountability for everything that happens now, because you feel like the reason why that fell is because it was your fault. Let me tell you, let me tell you, that is one of the worst places to be, to feel like you have to be, that person that wants to be forgiven or take accountability for everything that happens in your friend groups, or just even in your familiar relationships, personal or interpersonal, that you had to be the person like, you know what, I'm sorry, if I didn't do this and this would have happened, even if even if it had nothing to do with you, you just insert yourself, or you just like, you know what, I'll just fix it because I know how it feels, or to have something fail because it's my fault. So not having that conversation with yourself will definitely lead you down that pathway, and it can also turn you into that person that's real inauthentic, like a fake person, and it can make you into a people pleaser. So be very mindful of not having those conversations with yourself where you feel like you need to have that forgiveness, because you can ask God or whatever you believe in to forgive you, but how can you ask for forgiveness if you don't want to forgive yourself? Hello, this thing over. Dun, dun, dun. Right. So literally using a journal to take time to make lists of the qualities you actually like about yourself, especially your strengths and your skills. And you can even journal about things you want to develop. Like, say for instance, you have a skill set of bringing people together. Like, you know what, I want to develop more creative skill sets, like drawing or painting or abstract painting, or even making resin art. You can write that down in your journal, because it'll remind you like, hey, I got these new things to try this spring or this summer or this winter. And these things are going to help me because, I'm forgive myself. I'm going to treat myself well. I'm going to, obtain these new things. So because I have the skill set of bringing people together, we can come together and do these things together too, as well, because I'm a great leader. I'm a great person to bring people together. People listen to me, so having that great skill set, you know, uh, combined with your own like personal creativity, can always be a great way to empower yourself when you are in that space of forgiveness, right? For self, right? So keep that in mind, right? Because it takes you away from the feelings of it's all your fault. It takes you away from that self blame. It takes you away from that self sabotage, recognizing your true power and remembering who you are. Period. Hello. Because most times people forget who they are when they too busy beating themselves up. Okay. Now, you have to recognize and pinpoint when you are self sabotaging. I like to call it self effacing behaviors. I feel like some of these words are overused. Your self effacing behaviors, like we just discussed, can be the way you talk to yourself, the way you think to yourself. Like, say for instance, even if you just drop a knife in the kitchen, you're so stupid. Instead of just picking up the knife, you just say things to yourself that don't even like, what are you talking to yourself? Hello? Why are you saying these things to yourself? You don't deserve that. You don't deserve that type of shit, put it on yourself because someone else did it to you, somewhere along the line, or someone else judged you too harshly. And now you're like, oh, because you're not the type of person that want to go out and judge other people so harshly. Now you judge yourself so harshly, and you feel like you're not worth it because someone else did that to you. Okay? Period. Point blank, period. It doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't come from nowhere. That lack of confidence doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't come out your ass. It doesn't just fly into your heart, into your mind, into your aura. It comes from somewhere. And identifying when you are being self-effacing will help you to forgive yourself. Because if you sitting there and something as simple as you dropping something, you're saying you're stupid, or something as simple as somebody like you feel like somebody's rejecting you, you feel like you're worthless, that's not okay. Period. It's no justification for that. It's no deflection. It's never going to be okay. So you had to remind yourself, like, hey, I'm being way too hard on myself. It's been way too many people in my existence that have been hard on me, and fuck that. I'm not going to ever treat myself like that. Ever. Hello? Period. Listen, um, and I get it, be like, oh, we're our own worst critics, blah, blah, blah. People hurt people hurt me. No, fuck all that shit. You're not about to sit there and hurt yourself because somebody hurt you. No way. No way, no how. Okay. So that's literally how you silence the inner critic, and that's literally how you address the inner critic. Because we are extremely hard on ourselves. So I'm going to give you an exercise really quickly, okay? So on one side of a piece of paper, you can write down what your inner critic says to you, which tends to be extremely critical and irrational, right? And on the other side, you can write the self-compassionate and rational response for each thing you wrote on the other side of the paper, right? So you write something like, oh, I'm ugly. On the other side of the paper, you can write, I'm very beautiful, I'm healthy, and I have perfectly flawed skin. Whether or not you have perfectly flawed skin, manifest that shit. Period. Okay. Or join our club, or get a hill and live it on Clubhouse and find out how to get perfectly flawed skin. Hello. Just saying. Just saying. Okay. No need to be down on yourself when there's so much information here out here in the world to help you be up on yourself. Hello. Okay. So the best way to move on is to be exactly clear about what you desire. It's hard to forgive yourself and move on when you're not clear. You're not clear if you even want to move on. You're not clear on how to forgive yourself or what you actually done. You may not be as self-critical as others, but you think like, you know what? Damn, I might have played a role, but what role did I actually play? Or what do I want to do from here on out? So if a mistake you made hurt another person, you need to determine the best course of action, right? So do you want to link up with this person and apologize to them? Do you want to write them a letter? You want to send them a basket with a letter? So it's important to reconcile and make amends, right? So, but if you're on the fence about what to do because you're not sure if you actually played a role, you have to really sit back and reevaluate it. So sometimes it's just like sometimes the situation is so messed up that your best bet is just to apologize. I'm sorry for whatever I did. Let's keep it plain and simple. Listen here, I recognize I hurt you, and whatever I've done to hurt you, I sincerely apologize, and I will never do it again. Now, if you want to be clear and elaborate on how I hurt you, I will receive that. But I'm just here showing up to let you know that whatever I've done to hurt you, I didn't mean to do it. I asked the Most High or whatever you believe in for that forgiveness. I'm asking you for forgiveness, but guess what, baby? I forgave myself. Period. Period. So if you want to hold on to it, then fuck you. No, I'm just playing. No. I'm just playing. So like, if you go to, like, so it just give them an opportunity. Like, you know what? This person really, 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 cares about me. This person cares about my feelings. And they didn't come at me like, oh, but you did this and you did that. I know y'all didn't expect that one, huh? You're like this, what? No, don't say that. Don't say that. But literally, like, just let them know, like, listen, I suck from my spiritual guidance. I'm coming at you for forgiveness. I'm actually, here making amends, and whether you forgive me or not, baby, I forgive myself. You gotta do the Rico Suave move. Hello. I mean, like, but if it's really, really serious, please don't be all goofing off like me, because y'all know I'm goofy. So if it's serious or not, that's how Empress be like, what? Okay. No, I'm just playing. But literally, when you forgive yourself for hurting someone else before you even apologize to them, if you never apologize to them, when you forgive yourself, it actually lifts weights off of you. It actually makes your integrity more solid. Okay. It actually helps you to transform and traject yourself into that optimal wellness space. Okay. So keep all those things in mind when you are in that space of not being clear about exactly what you desire, because you're not sure how you impacted the situation, or you don't, you're not in that space of accountability just yet, but you want to make amends so it doesn't drag on. Okay. Now, The one that the next one is the one that nobody ever listens to for the most part, until it's too late. Taking your own advice. Hello? Hello, is this thing on? I think I need a moment. I think I need a moment. So it's easier to tell someone else what to do than to take your own advice. Hello? Okay. Listen, at at no point in my existence, at this point in my existence, I take my own advice. But it was so many points in my existence where I would take my own advice and doubt it. And it would get me in so many sticky situations that was hard to get out of because I did not listen to my intuition. I did not take that on head on. I did not traject myself. I did not propel myself into like, what, this is what it is. This is what it's going to be. And this is what the hell is going to stay. Right. So when you are telling someone else to do something and you're not doing it yourself, it kind of makes you look like an ass. Okay. Um, and if you're having like a difficult time like maneuvering through those thoughts in your head and things of that nature, um, you can always, ask a friend to help you role play. Like, okay, ask them to like, put yourself in my shoes and then see how they would deal with it, if they find like themselves like hard to forgive themselves, like how would they deal with it? And you can just take that as a perception based thing, not as something that's solidified, not as something that you should do or something that you should imitate or something that you should copy, right? So at this point you're on the receiving end of the advice and you're not the giver. Okay, so keep that in mind, right? We all the way up to number 9, so we almost through with that. So I'm about to come to club deck. If you want to share anything about forgiving yourself or your experience with forgiving yourself or anything of that nature or forgiving someone else, hello. Like I said, this is the final day of the move on week. Hello. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. Right. So the worst thing we could ever do, right? We get stuck. We get stuck and stagnated. We get nostalgic. Okay. And I personally know that nostalgia does not help you forgive yourself. Okay. Because you start replaying and replaying and replaying and replaying. And those thoughts and that guilt and all those feelings that don't belong to you, they make it known like, hey, period. Like, hey, how you doing today? It's me. It's me. You hear me down here? Exactly. So it's our human nature to spend time and energy hitting that rewind button, right? And some while it's important to process, right? But going over what happened again and again won't allow you to take any steps to move forward. It just won't. When you are going over things in a relationship to forgive someone, you stay with that person because you're like, oh wow, this was the time when they treated me good, and you just hold on to all those good things, and it just keeps you in places, like I said, those sticky situations where you don't belong, actually, or you should have been had removed yourself. Um, and then you get into that whole self-effacing behavior all over again. That whole quote unquote, I'm a horrible person, I'm a bad person. So you have to stop yourself and oh, I'm trying to sneeze. Excuse me, guys. Like by taking deep breaths and going for walks and things of that nature, okay? And that interrupts you from having that those thoughts about yourself, okay? Now, let me come back to club deck and see. Hey Raquel, do you want to share anything? Hi Judy. Any of y'all want to share? Raise your hand, come to the stage. I'm gonna send y'all some invites, see if you want to share anything um on this topic before we finish the last two, of course. Um okay. I think I invited. Now, okay, so y'all just listening in. That's good. So if you do come to the stage, since y'all have the invites, just come off mic and I'll hear you, right? So number 11 literally is giving kindness and compassion to yourself, because if your first response to a negative situation is always to throw yourself under the bus, you really have to be like, you know what, like I said before, do you really think you deserve to talk to yourself like that? Really? You're worth more than that. Like I said, like say for instance, if you do something and like you drop something, you call yourself like an asshole. Like, no, you don't have to say that. You could just pick it up. You don't have to be like, oh, if something happens, like, oh, I'm stupid. No, just try again. You know, um, these things we say to us come from other people. It stems from other relationships we've had. And when we recognize that, we do show more empathy and compassion to ourselves, because that's the only way to begin the journey of forgiving ourselves. Sometimes when people hurt us, we have to forgive ourselves for allowing that, or for not knowing that we were in that mess with people hurting us. Sometimes we never see it because of the dopamine releases, the norepinephrine, and all the adrenaline stuff like that, going off, love chemicals going off in personal relationships. It doesn't have to be an intimate partner relationship. We just literally need to forgive ourselves. Sometimes we do see it. We just stay in a situation because we think it's going to get better, because we're optimistic, overly optimistic, and it doesn't get better. So keep all these things in mind, that it takes time, patience, and reminding yourself that you are that, period. You are worth it, and you are worth forgiveness. Hello. Of course, the last one, you already know, like, I already went over all the tips already. But of course, the last and final one is, you find very like hard to forgive yourself, and you're really always self-effacing, noticing that you're not getting any sleep, noticing that you're always sad, noticing that you don't do things that you used to do anymore. It may be time for you to seek professional help, of course. So this week has been brought to you by Moving On. Listen, and we covered so many things on Moving On, and I hope that the next time you guys can join us live, join us on video, and even join us on StreamYard. Hello. Now, with that being said, this was the AM Inspiration Show to wake that ass up spiritually, consciously, physically, emotionally, physically, and financially. And guess what? Also soulfully. Hello. 7 days a week, 365, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Okay. And I just want to say thank you for coming out. If you are in the streets of Clubhouse, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, iHeart, Pandora, wherever you at out there in those streets, even Anchor, make sure you give us a share and a follow, and tune in and tune up. Period. Take care.